I predicted the Jacksonville Jaguars would go 4-13. The reality is they went 3-14, so I was one game off. I basically nailed it. It was a weird and ugly year. Teddy wrote in on Patreon, as you can do. Teddy says, ironically, I think the best moment of the year for the Jaguars was firing Urban Meyer, though the fans should get a shout-out for showing up dressed as clowns. So if you don't know, A, they hired Urban Meyer and very promptly fired him. B, Jaguars fans at the end of the year started dressing up like clowns and going to games, which is hilarious and amazing. And even if they're good in the future, can we just make that a tradition? That'd be really fun. Like either Jaguars fans can do it, or if your team is doing bad, I want to see more of it happening. So either Jaguars fans just dress up as clowns perpetually, or if your team is bad, let's say the Falcons are terrible next year, I want Atlanta fans to dress up as clowns. Or if the Saints are bad, or the Jets, or whoever. Like, if your team is bad, I would love to see the tradition of sports fans dressing up as clowns to go to games. That sounds hilarious and really, really fun. Let's talk about Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer made a lot of mistakes early on. He influenced them. They drafted Travis Etienne, a running back they didn't really need, which showed that I felt like he didn't value James Robinson, the running back they already had. It was kind of weird. Although I did explain why it made sense because, Travis Etienne can both operate as a receiver and a running back, but then he got hurt immediately and missed the entire year. So that felt like a wasted pick by Urban Meyer in the first round. He traded Gardner Minshew away after giving him a bunch of first-team reps, which really just wasted a bunch of reps. I mean, you took a bunch of valuable reps in training camp away from your rookie quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, only to trade the guy away. It made no sense at all. Apparently, he kicked the player, I believe Josh Lambo, Josh Scobie, one of the kicker in Jacksonville, whoever that was at the time. He kicked him. That came out later. That was kind of the final straw that got Urban Meyer booted. He, after the Bengals game in Cincinnati, he didn't fly back on the team plane. He went on his own adventure and cheated on his wife in a very public fashion. Urban Meyer lost all credibility as a head coach, and so they fired him midseason. On December 15th, it was announced he has been fired. That is after Week 14 of the NFL season. Now, despite all of the chaos around the Jaguars, let's talk about the young rookie quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. He had a 59.6% completion percentage. He threw for 3,641 yards, 12 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. That's not great. More interceptions than touchdowns. Although, even though the stat line isn't very good, it requires perspective if you're going to talk about what Trevor Lawrence did last year, because the team around Trevor was a nightmare. And he did not go to a stable organization. Where you go as a rookie quarterback really matters. And he's got obvious talent. In fact, Week 18, I thought he put together the most encouraging performance of the year. They beat the Colts, a division rival, and eliminated the Colts from making the playoffs, which was awesome. So the year ended on a high note, and Trevor played very well in that game, Week 18, left me with a good impression, and I was like, okay, we're going to be all right. So when you look at, hey, Trevor's clearly really good, talent-wise. He ended the year well, and honestly, you have to evaluate with the lens of all of the drama and nonsense that went on in Jacksonville. It's amazing Trevor did as well as he did. So I've got a positive outlook on Trevor Lawrence, the young rookie quarterback, second-year quarterback now in Jacksonville, going into his second year. Let's be clear about that. They hired Doug Peterson to be their new head coach moving forward. He's a former NFL quarterback. He also won a Super Bowl as the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. That's awesome. All they got to do now is put some stability around Trevor Lawrence. It seems like Doug Peterson could be that guy who can connect with Trevor and surely treat him in a more professional fashion than Urban Meyer did. I'm very, very curious to see what kind of moves the Jaguars make in free agency. One bright spot this year, though, was the rookie corner, Tyson Campbell. He struggled early on, but in the second half of the year, he really stepped up and started playing very, very well. The other corner, though, kind of the biggest bust for the Jaguars all year last year, maybe not biggest bust, that's a bit maybe unfair. Shaquille Griffin was a bust, though, in my opinion. They signed him, they gave him a 3-year, $40 million contract, I believe $28 million guaranteed, something like that. And despite a big contract, expecting him to be a starter, he made very little impact last year for the Jaguars. He had 0 interceptions, not very many pass deflections. He got beat deep a number of times, even by guys who were like, dude, it's not exactly DeAndre Hopkins running all over Shaquille Griffin. Like, that's not good. You can't have that happen. I was the guy I was least impressed with, and maybe it's because my expectations were too high, was Shaquille Griffin, which just makes that signing look bad. I don't know how you justify it any more than that. It just wasn't good. There is some talent, though, on the Jaguars defense. I think guys like, I think of people like Miles Jack, Caleb Chasson, Josh Allen. Like, there are people on the Jaguars defense that I'm excited about to watch next year and moving forward. The leading receiver for the Jaguars was Marvin Jones. He had 73 catches on 832 yards, 4 touchdown catches. The leading rusher for the Jaguars was James Robinson. Second-year running back, 164 carries, 767 yards, 8 touchdown runs. I hope he's their feature back next year. I'm curious to see how rookie second-year receiver, rookie last year, second-year running back next year, Travis Etienne can fit in. He got hurt before the year, did not play at all last year. I'm excited to see him back next year because how will they use him? As a running back solely? I want to see him split out wide as a receiver, hopefully a lot. Maybe we can get a good 1-2 punch between James Robinson and Travis Etienne. But Travis Etienne feels like a wild card that I am very curious to see how they use him next year. Now, the year as a whole was not a total waste because you got Trevor Lawrence and the silver lining of Urban Meyer. He was such a bad head coach that they actually now, the Jaguars, once again, in back-to-back years, have the number 1 overall pick again in this year's draft as well. So they can get another key impact player, number 1 overall. So Urban Meyer, a blessing and a curse. He maybe was awful last year, but he did put them in a position to get a good player for next year. They hired Doug Peterson as their new head coach. Honestly, I look at the Jaguars right now. They're in a very similar position as they were going into last year, where they've got a new head coach, young quarterback, some talent on the roster that's young and exciting. And let's see if they can do anything with it this time, because what happened last year was not good and in fact, embarrassing for the Jaguars. Also, going into last year, I said that the Jaguars season really was depending on how they did against, quote, bad or rebuilding teams. There were 5 teams they were going to play, or 5 games, 4 teams they were going to play against last year that I thought were games that had an opportunity to win. They played the Houston Texans twice. They played the Cincinnati Bengals, the Falcons, and the Jets. Weirdly enough, they lost all 5 of those games. They lost to Houston 37-21, and then again, week 15, 30-16. They lost to Cincy 24-21. They lost to Atlanta 21-14. The Jets 26-21. And the 3 wins the Jaguars did put together were kind of odd. They beat Miami 23-20 week 6. They beat the Buffalo Bills week 9, 9-6. It was like, where did this come from? When they beat the Bills, I was like, that's absurd and very weird. And then week 18, they beat Indy 26-11 to keep Indy out of the playoffs. That was a storyline I was tracking with the Jaguars last year, and I talked a lot about how these 5 games are going to determine the entire year. But that kind of really depended on Urban Meyer keeping his job. And the minute Urban Meyer got fired, in my opinion, all that narrative kind of went out the window, and like, who cares anymore? It's a busted year anyway. So I wanted to revisit that because I did talk about that narrative a lot, but once Urban Meyer got fired, that entire narrative, against bad and rebuilding teams, I didn't care about. And in fact, Cincinnati wasn't a bad team at all. They were rebuilding, I guess, but the Bengals went to the Super Bowl. So the fact that they took Cincy to a 3-point game is actually maybe even an achievement, I guess. I don't know. So not a great year for the Jaguars, but again, silver lining, not a total loss. They got the number 1 overall pick again. Some young talent. Let's see what they can do with it this year. And that's my prediction versus reality for the Jacksonville Jaguars.